Hello, and welcome to Social Work Speaks, a podcast dedicated to helping future social workers explore behavioral health careers through interviews with Dayton area professionals. This podcast is made possible by a generous grant provided to Sinclair Community College's Social Work Department by Behavioral Health Career Exploration. I'm your host, Caleb Cromer, and today I'm talking to Gwen Helton. So stay tuned for my interview with them in just a moment. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Nice to see everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today, we are here with Gwen Helton, Chair of the Mental Health and Addiction Services Department here at Sinclair. Gwen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing very well. Today is a wonderful day. So I like to ask my guests before we get started, is this your first podcast that you've been on?
It is my very first one.
It is? Okay, good.
Yes.
How do you feel about being on a podcast? What's it feel like right now?
I'm excited. I've thought that I would love to actually have a podcast to talk about our field and just to talk about important things in the world. So.
Oh, okay. So you've already had this on your mind a little bit.
Yeah,
is what you're saying. Okay. So were you thinking about having your own podcast that you wanted to host and have guests on there?
I think that would be fun.
Okay, nice. Well, this could be a little jump start, I think, for
maybe.
you. So we understand that you are the chair of the Mental Health and Addiction Services here at Sinclair, but I wanted to know, or at least I wanted to ask, is there anything else that you're a part of that you do that you wanted to mention today?
Part of the reason I'm here is I'm on a couple of task force for behavioral health workforce. We have a regional workforce shortage, a statewide workforce shortage in behavioral health. So in the addiction services realm and mental health, which we have 2 degrees in that. So I'm pretty passionate about finding the right people for that pathway. We've started to realize we want to talk to students even earlier, K through 12, so that they understand, the pathways to the helping profession.
Okay, nice. So just out of curiosity, how would you go about talking to the younger kids in comparison to how you talk to older people when it comes to the behavioral health? How do you go about that?
I think just giving them some definitions to understand the different kinds of jobs and the different ways you can work, because it's quite a large umbrella, the helping profession. So a lot of kids hear about psychology because they end up taking it in their K through 12, certainly in high school.
Right.
But they don't always know about the social work pathway, or in my case, I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor, and that requires a master's degree in the state of Ohio, but psychology undergrad, and then they can still, continue on, and that opens up ways for them to make more money, but more importantly, to work in the ways that they want to work with clients, to be providing counseling. They can do that through agencies, but also have their own private practice. So just letting them know there's lots of options, and they may know they want to help people, but they don't know how to go about starting that. So we want to get that message out early and earlier to kids so that they really understand what they can be doing.
I like that because kids, they're so, influential. We need to educate them on these certain things because they really are the future. And I think it starts with them for sure. And that's great that you mentioned that, because I think that's how you initiate a lot of change. It's about the long run. So you instill it in them now, and then they'll perform later once they develop and are able to understand things better.
Yeah.
Which I think is an awesome thing. I'm really glad you mentioned that. So it sounds like you have a very clear view of the field and what you want to accomplish in it. But what we wanted to start with today, with one of our main topics, is we wanted to get into your own personal experience with this field. And the first question that I wanted to ask is, how long have you been working in the field so far?
Around 30 years, a long time. I was working in the field for a while before I became a teacher and before I came to Sinclair. So I started out with that psychology degree, wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I'm a first-generation college student, so I didn't have a lot of role models or people helping me to figure out what that journey looks like. So I had I bounced off of things a few times before. It wasn't a straight pathway, I will say that.
Okay.
But I certainly knew pretty young that I thought it would be neat to help other people, and I didn't know what that looked like. So got that psychology degree. Somebody said, you can work in the court system. So I ended up working at probation and really liked the helping part, didn't necessarily need to be in the security part. So I realized, as often students do, that I needed to get that master's degree in community counseling so I could do the work I wanted to do.
Okay.
So I ended up working in the prison system as a counselor, and then I worked in private practice, worked in EAP, worked in hospice, worked
Oh,
a
wow.
variety of places, which does help inform my teaching because I certainly can talk about, that diverse pathway to the field.
Mm-hmm.
And ended up working in higher ed and counseling. That's how I got to Sinclair. I was at a 4-year school, then came to our counseling center, then got a bug for teaching and went fully for that, and started out as an adjunct and then ended up teaching. So all of those years of experience, about 20 years experience, I could use in the classroom to
Yes.
assist students to understand what it really looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the book, certainly we get a version of what it looks like, but
Yeah.
if we can bring those stories, it brings the material to life. So
Yes, yes.
I like
and
doing that.
That's why we have you here today.
Yeah.
Because we really need to know what's going on in the world. Because books, like you said, they give you a general thing, nice structured idea. But real world situations are different than what the text can bring you. And it's very interesting that you told me you were involved in the prison system. And I was actually curious about that because, incarceration and all those different things happen, especially for young Black men and things like that. So before we get too deep into the overall experience, could you touch on what it was like in that prison system, being a social worker? What was it like in general?
Yeah. Interesting. Uh, I always say that the students that I worked with and the clients that I worked with were it was very enriching. I got a lot of value out of that. I think we added a lot of value to that situation, but we weren't always greeted with open arms because we were treating people as, I hate to say this, but as humans and, really connecting to them on a different level.
Yeah.
And that was not always understood. Even though we say we're rehabilitating people, that I thought that we were really part of a process where that was really happening, and I was really proud of that. So the more we can provide education to students, even if they're incarcerated, I mean, that helps people to, have a second chance. That's our program. We have a lot of people in long-term recovery. We have a lot of returning citizens. So I think it's part of my personal mission and my whole life I've spent working with people, trying to give them second, third, fourth, fifth chances to really embrace a different way of being able to live. And the more, I think knowledge is power, and education gives people the power to make a difference for themselves. And then they make a difference for others.
That's true. It's a very infectious thing. I believe that wholeheartedly. So what age group were you working with in that prison system?
Adults, so 18 to 88, they were all different. It was a Dayton Correctional Institution. At the time, there were still males there. Now it's a female prison.
Oh, okay.
But at the time, there were males there. So they were a lower security level, so they could move about the place and have jobs and go to school. And then we provided treatment as well.
Okay. All right. That's understandable. So the environment was relatively set up for you to be accepted into them because they're already kind of living the right way, trying to be rehabilitated and whatnot. So when you came in, it was kind of like a push to get them hopefully to move in that direction a little bit better, which I think is awesome. We need more people doing that because, the system, it's not really set up for people to have those second, third, and fourth chances. It's kind of hard for some people to get out of there. And I mean, if I saw somebody like you coming in to help me out, I would be really, really happy about that. So I'm glad that they put you in place to be able to help those people. Can you recall any situation, like a specific one that really touched your heart and, you helped somebody to a point where they were able to get back on their feet?
Yeah, more than once. Just having that opportunity to inspire people to learn about, addiction and learn about how that is a family disease and how it affects people. And then being able to return to the community, knowing that in particular, I can think of a person whose family was challenged with addiction. It is a genetic disorder, so it was certainly something that they were afraid to go back and be at family gatherings and be out, and they weren't sure how they were going to do, but they ended up going out, and with that information, they were able to make different choices, pick different places to be, and continue on with their treatment, and they were able to get a job. And we've seen a lot of people who have turned their lives around. I'm a true passionate advocate for long-term recovery. It's possible. People don't believe it, but I've seen it thousands of times at this point where people change their lives. So I don't even have one example. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
Oh, yeah. Hey, that's good news then.
Yeah.
That means it's working, whatever you're doing out there. So I'm happy to hear that. So through these 20 years of experience, it sounds like you've been successful in trying to help these people get to where they need to go and basically give them a better understanding of life and a different perspective, which I think is what some people need. I always mention to my guests that I bring on the show that I'm interested in that as well. I'm interested in more of like the therapeutic process. I kind of wanted to be a therapist. I don't know how to go about that for real, but that's kind of in my heart too. So I really relate and understand what you're saying as far as helping others and things like that. So I'm really happy that you were helping some people in that prison system because they do really need a lot of help. So now that we know that you have a lot of experience, you've been in the field for a while, what have been some things that you really enjoy about the field, would you say?
Again, I think it's a calling. It sounds like you have that in you as well. We kind of know that it's in there, and then we decide what we're going to do with that. And if we have the knowledge about the pathways, then we can certainly determine what does that look like and where do we belong under that large umbrella with the helping profession. So I think it's, like I said, it's a calling, and then we are able to kind of find where we belong in the field. I would encourage people to get a mentor or ask those questions of people who are in the know. And that's really important, to have that support. Because like I said, as a first generation college student, I didn't. And it is better if you can get the facts and the information so you can make a proper decision.
Yes. Yeah, because you got it from the ground up, basically. You had to go through everything pretty much on your own.
Yeah.
Luckily now there's a lot of outlets and things that people have. And I think situations like this, a podcast where somebody can just listen and try to understand and learn new things is also a great thing with the internet and stuff like that. So I'm glad that we're able to do this. And, you're still continuing to help people. I tell my guests, this is still social work. It's just a different type of social work. This will be here for generations to be able to watch and learn from. So you're actively still doing your job right now. People get a very clear picture of what it is like. So that's wonderful. On the other hand, though, are there any things that you possibly dislike about the field or have struggled with at all?
Things that I see students struggling with that I also struggled with is trying to do all of the things that we're responsible to do as humans. Many of our students have other responsibilities in their lives, whether it's taking care of elders or children, other jobs, trying to go to school. So in this field, people end up doing an internship or a practicum, and that makes it a little difficult when you have all those other responsibilities. So I try to be realistic with people and help them figure out how they can pace themselves and a degree pursuing this field so that they can be successful. So that's challenging. And post-COVID, the pay is better, but we continue to advocate for, even better pay for this field because it's hard work and we want people to be able to earn a living wage. But again, with that education and knowing that you can continue and get that bachelor's degree, that master's degree, even a postdoc, you can, make more than a living wage.
Yeah.
And there are pathways to that. So helping people to see what that looks like as soon as possible and helping them reach those personal goals.
Okay. Why is the pay better after COVID? What was the reason for that?
I think the workforce shortage is driving up. If they can't fill spots, they have to pay more to attract talent. And even the entry-level positions and some of the certificates we have for entry-level positions, people can get a job with one course in our degree. And it's for a chemical dependency counselor assistant. And I've seen those jobs go from $12 an hour up to, upwards of $20 an hour.
Dang, from 12 to 20?
Yeah, it's been quite a shift in our field. And of course, it depends on if you're in a rural area or a city. It depends on what actual agency you're working at. But the pay scale has gone up quite a bit in the last several years.
Okay, that should be inspiration for anybody right there. The money's out there right now from 12 to 20. That's a lot. So that's wonderful. That means that there are some opportunities out there for people. Now, I know you briefly touched on this earlier, But is there any specific advice you would give someone who's about to start their career in behavioral health, like they're right at the beginning?
Yeah. Again, getting that accurate information, finding people who are already in the field doing what you want to do. When I was in student services here, I asked students to think of the end, like where do you want to end up? What population do you want to work with? Who do you want to be? Where do you want to be going to work every day?
Yeah.
And then let's work backwards. What's the pathway to that? So if I want to work with kids in a court system and I want to work with ages 13 to 16, what jobs are available? And then what is the pathway? And the other thing I ask people is, are you a lifelong learner? Do you need this to be fast? How much money do you have for school? So that may help them decide their pathway of how much time do they have to spend. Another thing that happens a lot is I'll get people saying, I'm too old to do this because they want to change their career maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're still going to be the same age whether you do this education or not.
Yeah.
So why not embrace what you want and your dreams? I don't think we're ever too old.
Exactly.
Just do, if you're called, again, to serve in this way, then go for it. And there's always people there to support, and resources along the way. There's actually fellowships and scholarships and grants and loan forgiveness right now for this particular field. So it's a really, really good time to be thinking about it.
Yeah.
But find somebody, if it's a professor, if it's somebody that's in the field, it's somebody, sometimes people have been to treatment themselves and they go back to talk to one of those providers. Find someone who will champion you and help you take those next steps.
Okay, nice. Has anyone ever told you like a reason why they would feel like they're too old to be doing this? Like, why would anyone say that they're too old?
Too close to retirement. I don't know if I can do this. Maybe it's a confidence issue or believing in themselves, believing that they can change their career and that it would be worth doing. So private practice is my retirement plan. I'm already starting that, and I'm several years from retirement, but I'm like, I don't want to stop working. I still want to be of value when I retire. So
Right, I totally understand.
Yeah, I think that there's ways we can continue. And somebody who has lived has wisdom to share that, a younger person might, it may look different.
Exactly.
So.
That's why we need those older people, because my father's 78, and he retired, and he still wanted to be doing more work. I feel like once you retire, you have maybe like 5 years where you're like, okay, I'm enjoying this, not doing anything. But then you want to do something. All of us are human. We're meant to be doing something.
Yeah.
And, I believe also that you can't ever be too old, especially in a social situation. The older you are, like you just said, the more wisdom you have. That's useful. Yeah. Some people need to hear that. And I think, shout out to my dad. I think that's the reason why I'm the man that I am today, because he is older and he's always mentored me, pushing me through life, making sure I was doing the right thing, because he had already had all those experiences. So he knew what to tell me. He knew how to maneuver me through, guide me a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit, so that I had the right idea about life. And I think that can apply to this situation too. I think my last guest was talking about how some people would prefer somebody who's older. Some older people who are going through certain things would like to talk to somebody on their age level. And it depends on personal preference and everything like that. But I know exactly what you mean. Having that older person can be a great help sometimes, for sure. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Yeah. So I'm glad you're encouraging those older people to go out and do that. It's important. Yeah. So you've basically touched on a lot of these things that I was going to ask pretty much, but I wanted to ask you to go in depth about the future of the field. You've been in it for a while. You've had a lot of experience. Where do you see it heading in the future?
I think that certainly post-COVID as well, with what we saw, people were speaking more clearly about their challenges with mental health. Something I would say is we all have mental health, and so are we working towards improving it, or are we doing things to harm it, or are we facing challenges that are outside of our control that would change it? So I think that we're finally, as a society, understanding that this, we all have mental health, and there are ways that we can, as a society, promote people, reduce stigma so people can get the help that they need. So I see there's a lot of hope in the future of this field. We who have been in it in all these years already knew that, but we're bringing everybody along with us now, realizing, again, long-term recovery is possible if someone's facing substance use disorder. So I think, there's a lot of promising opportunities with the field. As I said, fellowships, loan forgiveness, all kinds of things happening to encourage people to be in the field. The job growth outlook that I've looked at recently was 22% over the next 8 to 10 years. So that, the market is growing, the discipline is growing. We have a workforce shortage. So really, how do we attract talent, and how do we keep people in the field, and how do we support people to be in it? So it's really, I'm really hopeful about it. Another thing I would say is we're big champions in our department about dually licensed people. So if they can help people with substance use disorder and mental health issues, that's ideal. If we could start treating people, the whole person holistically. So just continuing those kinds of programs and that kind of training for people that are getting into the field. I say I'm the most employable person I know because I'm dually licensed, and and that's what we need. Our clients need that. People, their issues don't live in a vacuum. We believe in mind, body, spirit. We believe the brain is part of the body. So let's really equip people who are getting ready to be in the field or who are already in the field to be able to holistically help, an individual. So I think that's the wave of the future. But we're moving in that direction. But I think there's, I'm hoping that we're continuing to reduce stigma and inviting people to get the help that they really need.
Yeah, I think you are. I mean, based off of everything you just said, and I haven't done any research about it, but it does sound like it's moving in a very positive direction, moving forward, not back. So that's very good. So when somebody is about to start in this behavioral health field, do you think that they need to be like kind of drop shadowing a little bit first before they decide to go in on their own? Should they be a spectator a little bit, or do you think somebody who just finished school and everything can just go into it and be fine?
Basically, the licensing in Ohio, especially for like the master's level or even the bachelor's level in social work, there's requirements that they job shadow, that they observe, that they do these internships and practicums so that they can see how things are done, and so they can become ethical clinicians. So I certainly really encourage that. So I think that oftentimes when people have received their own treatment, they'll end up, maybe wanting to be a helper. So they've seen it from that side of the desk, and it's important to see it from the other side and get that supervision, the clinical supervision, and consult. So we encourage that in our program, and we certainly encourage that in the practicum. Our particular program, there's 420 hours of practicum. So they work right with a clinician out there in the world with live, vulnerable patients, and they learn by doing. But they've done a lot of simulation in the classroom before they go out and do that. So I think that's the best pathway, is to practice, on your classmate, then go out and be able to observe clinicians doing it, and then get your feet wet and do it with that support, and then they're ready to go. I think I am glad that we have the pathways we have in Ohio, because I think there's a protective factor for clients so that we won't do harm.
Okay, so that protective factor being, by the time somebody is on their own, they have gone through so much practice and simulations and everything that they are perfect and ready to go, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
From all that.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of like the model of a physician, where they go through school, they learn. We talked about the book learning. Yeah. Then there's this practice, and then there's this, here's what it really looks like, and then go out, and then they have to still work under someone else, do rotations and stuff. It's very similar. When someone does the whole pathway, they're going to be well suited and ready. And we are gatekeepers ethically for our profession. So if we see someone's not ready, or they need some coaching, we provide the coaching, and we help them to be ready, or help them find a place where they can be a helper.
Good.
And find the pathway that's right for them.
Nice. Okay. So in this whole process, everything building up, leading up to everything so that they can get on their own, is a person, are they better on their own, or is it nicer to have two people in there? As far as like a client, do clients feel the pressure when there's another person in there, or do they feel more comfortable when it's just one person?
Sometimes, on a one-on-one, sometimes it can be nice to have just that other person in there. Now, we always ask permission if they want, like if there's a student or something, and a client has the right to say, no, I don't want that student in here. So they're allowed to say no.
Okay.
But then if you think of a group situation and there's a large group of people, 8 to 12, it is kind of nice to have a co-facilitator, honestly, because if something happens with a particular client, you still have someone that can continue with the group. So I have done both. And for group, I like having a co-facilitator. One-on-one, I think it is nice. And I like that clients have the power to say whether they want, multiple people in there when they're alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the clients have rights, and I think that they should, and I'm glad they do, because they can have some agency and make decisions.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious about that because I was thinking about, if I was with somebody doing the therapy session, it would be a little bit different having somebody else in there. But I wasn't aware that you were doing like group work. Could you explain what the group situation is like?
Oh yeah, a lot of the kind of services that are performed, mostly what I did in the prison system was that was a 55 session curriculum for cognitive behavioral therapy. So thoughts and how that creates feelings and behaviors. Mm-hmm. And we would help people, slow that process down and make different decisions, even though we often think that stuff is automatic. So group is very effective. It works. It is efficient because you can take a clinician or two and you could see 8 or 12 clients in an hour and a half instead of just seeing one at a time.
Yeah.
So it's a very effective method. It's used very much in this region as well as internationally and nationally. In our particular program, they take 8 credit hours of group and they learn to be a group member as well as facilitate groups and co-facilitate groups. So we are providing, again, that experience so that when they go out with vulnerable patients that they're able to actually, do no harm. So group is a huge, I absolutely love facilitating groups, and they are so effective because it helps when clients can see that they're not alone.
Yeah,
They'll often think, I'm the only one that's dealing with this. Other people don't talk about it. But then they sit in a group, and even if they look around and nobody looks like them, they start to realize, like, we have a common thread through our human experience, and we can find the commonalities. And through that, there's a lot of hope, and there's a lot of healing that can happen.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, I had no idea that there was a group thing. My whole perspective was just like a one-on-one.
Yeah.
But the group thing sounds very, very good and very useful and efficient. And I'm glad that you love doing it. That's another thing. It sounds like the passion that you have for it is very, very strong, which is an amazing thing. So we've kind of gotten an understanding now of your own personal experience. We know what it's been like over the 20 years you've been doing everything. So now we kind of want to talk about how we get there, okay, how everyone else can get there. And we understand that there is a mental health and addiction studies degree offered here at Sinclair. So I was wondering if you could start by explaining that degree to us in a general sense.
Okay. We actually, in our department, have 2 separate degrees. So mental health is one, and addiction services is the other. And as it might sound, by design, we made it so that the mental health degree does focus more on, mental health work and prepares individuals for, both of those degrees take the chemical dependency counselor assistant course so they could have that entry level job. And we talked about how that pay has gone up over time. I say instead of working at Chipotle, you could be working in the field and then building, your resume that way.
Right.
So they take that right away. The mental health degree then is going to have a focus on how do you work with, as a mental health tech, a behavioral health tech, a case manager, an outreach worker. There's so many things that our mental health students end up doing. And then the addiction services degree, embedded in that is the 180 hours of chemical dependency specific education required by the state of Ohio. So that board is Ohio Chemical Dependency Professionals Board. And they will take all of those courses as well as many others. And both of those are 65 credit hours.
Oh, my goodness.
But the addiction services degree prepares someone to take the licensing exam for licensed chemical dependency counselor 2 in the state of Ohio. So that they'd have the degree, they'd have the hours after they complete the degree, the CD-specific hours. They have to do a few more things for that board, but they can sit for that licensing exam. Many of our students in both degrees go on to get other degrees like addiction studies, like social work, integrated human services. So we work with a lot of regional colleges in Ohio, and they come and talk to our students and they accept our credits. And if they want to go on and continue their education, they can. But those degrees, our department's been around since 1967, so
Oh,
we've
okay.
been meeting the regional workforce need for a long, long time.
Mhm.
Very embedded with employers. We have a strong advisory committee. We have the 420-hour practicum that they both of those degree-seeking students complete. So those that are really interested in working with mental health and they know that right from the start, they often pick that degree. And then if someone is for sure they want to work with substance use disorder, then they'll pick the addiction services degree. We do real heavy faculty advising, so we help them discern that if they're not sure what they want to do.
Okay.
We help. And we do that mentoring and we do that career advising that I talked about
Yeah.
early on. And I even talk to people, I say there's no strings attached. If you belong in social work, if you belong in psychology, if you belong with us, I'm going to help you find where you belong.
Yes.
And you don't have to stick with us. You can determine where it is that you fit, again, in that large umbrella of helping.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of that. We also have certificates. We have the Chemical Dependency Counselor Assistant Preliminary,
Mhm.
and then we have a renewable, we have a certificate that meets the renewable hours for that board. And then if somebody has a degree out there in the world, but they want to add that credential, that licensed chemical dependency counselor credential, we've packaged those 180 hours for people that have a degree. So they
Nice.
come back. Even social work students here at Sinclair will come and they'll do those classes with us so they can have that dual license that I talked about earlier.
Okay.
So it's, again, we first saw the need in the local state hospitals, and we've evolved and we've changed our curriculum to meet the workforce need. And that advisory committee we have really helps us to determine and keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening in community mental health and happening in addiction treatment.
Mhm.
And then we make sure that we're meeting that need in the area.
Nice. Well, it sounds like you're giving the people who are coming to you with these degrees and whatnot a lot of comfort. And you're telling them that this isn't something you have to do. This is just something that's there for you if you want to do it, which I think is really, really nice, especially if I was getting into something that I wasn't quite sure about. Hearing something like that would make me feel so much better. So do you think that that intervention in the beginning, trying to give somebody that comfort, do you think that helps them succeed later on? Rather than, if you were not as detailed with everything, it might turn them away. What do you think?
I think so. I think that first of all, they know that they have a champion on their side and they know they have someone to come to and talk with. We try to connect with them early on. And I do think that that connection and that care and that support that we wrap around our students definitely helps them be successful, because they will hit bumps in the road.
Yeah.
We don't know. They may have a 2 or 3 year plan, because we allow students to go part-time or full-time.
Okay.
They may say they need to take 3 years to do that degree. Well, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 years.
Yeah.
So not only do we support them with that knowledge, but we also, if something comes up, we try to connect them with services here at Sinclair and the community that help them to get to the finish line. So
Good.
I
All
do
right.
think it really does help and make a difference for people to be completers and
Yeah.
to reach their goals, their personal and vocational goals.
I agree. That's very inspiring, even to me. Like, just knowing that you don't have to stress, because I think stress is such a big thing that a lot of people deal with, especially getting into jobs, getting out of college and all that, not knowing what the future holds. Like you said, like, we don't know what's going to happen in a year, 2 years, 3 years. And having that stress eased is so nice, because that's just a big thing. And I know that in social work, stress is something that's probably pretty prominent, because we all go through it in different ways. But being able to give somebody peace at mind, I think, is definitely helping with motivation for them to keep going after going through all the things, trying to get their degree and certificate and everything. So in relation to the degree, and this is just your own personal thing I'm asking, on a scale of difficulty, how difficult do you think it is to attain one of these degrees?
I mean, we definitely have rigor and we have high standards. We have something called behavioral competencies, even, because we know their interpersonal skills are going to be very important for them to be successful and not do harm. So I'd say, it's definitely not, there's probably easier ways to get through a degree than ours, with all of the simulation and all of the things that they have to do in that 420-hour practicum. But it's worthwhile. We found that we raise the bar. We ask people to rise to the occasion, and as long as we tell them what that looks like up front, most people are able to do that.
Okay.
So then they're fully prepared, like we talked about earlier. They're ready to actually work with people and be a ethically practicing clinician. So I don't know, like on a scale of 1 to 10, it's probably a 7 or an 8. It's definitely, I mean, there's definitely rigor and expectations.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to know. I wanted to see how difficult it was because these degrees, they vary in difficulty, that's for sure. And I'm on the back end of my college experience right now. And so I'm just curious because I had a natural knack. Like, obviously, if you're getting involved in a degree, you should have some sort of skill in it that you enjoy doing. And that's what helped me. But something like this, I feel like would probably be a little bit more difficult because there's more that goes into it because you're working with other people and you have to, be that person for other people. So I just wanted to kind of see what difficulty level you had to go through here at St. Clair to get through those specific things. So now that we know kind of how hard it is to get the degree, would you say that the degrees that are offered here at St. Clair, is this like a beginner level thing? And do you think that there should be more schooling after you attain after you obtain one of these degrees that we talked about? Or should you just go right into the workforce? What do you think?
A lot of our students are in the workforce already, and so we welcome that. Some of them are going to continue to work and find places that will support them to go on and go to school. What our students say is that once they've attained one of these mental health services or addiction services degrees, that all the other degrees they got were they were easier because they had already done the rigor of our program, so they were ready to go. And they were like, you all taught us this already. We're ready for this. So they're just continuing to add to their knowledge base, but mostly, and certainly additional practice. But they probably, because we practically over prepare people here at St. Clair, they are ready to go. And I always think that the more education someone can have, the more doors that opens for them. So I empower people to do that. I encourage them to do it. Just keep on going if you can. And I always say, if you've got the momentum going that you're in school, pick the next thing and do it while you have the momentum going. Because if you stop, it's easy to just, not go back. And we try to, that's why we bring so many schools in to meet our practicum students so they can get ready and have that face with a name and they can decide what they're going to do next while they have that momentum going.
Good. Okay. That is great advice. And I hope everybody heard that because I took 2 years off of college. I came in during the pandemic, so it was a little bit difficult. And after that first year, I was kind of ready to just be done for a little bit. Now, thankfully, I ended up coming back and everything's going perfectly fine. But having that momentum of already being in school, it makes it a lot easier because it's a lot harder to get started than it is to just maintain what you're already doing. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to this social field, I assume that applies greatly because that's a lot of information, a lot of time that you have to put in with all of this, so many hours and all that. So, yeah, it's probably best to just finish it all the way through. And if you have the capabilities and the opportunities to continue doing school, I personally would probably recommend it too. Yeah. Just because it sounds like it might make things a little bit easier as you go on into the field if you have more schooling in there. Yeah. So is there any specific advice that you can give students themselves that are pursuing this degree? Maybe they just got started or they're thinking about getting into it. Is there anything you want to tell them?
Get ready, buckle up. Another thing I say to people is, we hammer this and hammer it and hammer it. And people are like, what does it really look like? Self-care. And I'm like, it's not bubble baths and spa. And it's literally like, what can you do to check in with yourself? Is there some work that you need to do? Because sometimes when all humans have unresolved issues.
Yes.
And when they start, especially a rigorous clinical program like ours, that's going to get tapped on. Mm-hmm. So I encourage people, part of self-care may be doing your own recovery or your own work so that you can have the capacity to help other people. So if I'm taking care of myself and I'm also done some of my work, not that that won't continue to need to happen. I mean, I'm 30 years in and there's layers of stuff that still comes up when I work with clients. So right. I'm not going to work that out with my clients. I'm going to do that parallel work, and do that on behalf of having the capacity to be there for other people and be there for my clients. Mm-hmm. So I would say be honest with oneself about where am I? Do I need to do any of that work? We'd encourage it. Will I be committed to taking care of myself and checking in with myself and using resources and consulting and being honest with my supervisor or my colleagues, and also being able to say something to a colleague when you see them struggling and offer support.
Yeah.
Because, us being there for one another is really important. So we start those values with our students so that they can carry that on into the profession. But it's also so rewarding and so exciting to be in the field, giving back and helping. I'd been a teacher quite some time and I hadn't been out in the workforce, and I thought my stories, all these diverse stories I have, they're getting old,
Yeah.
and I want to be the person that is out there doing the thing and that I can teach about doing the thing. So I decided to open my own practice about a year ago, and I love it. It's so nice to be back in the field and be of service to clients again, and I can really, it kind of helps round out, what I know about the field. But things change, and we, humans are facing different things at different times. Lots of trauma happening. Right. So I'm glad that I'm back in that to use all this knowledge and skill that I have and all this experience.
Yes, because you have so much to share. We will all like to know. I'm learning just as much as everybody else is today. And every time I have a guest on here, you guys are always so inspiring. And that means a lot to me. But there's one thing that you had said that I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit. Is it easy to lose yourself in a field like this where you're having to be social all the time, working with so many different people? Is it easy to lose yourself in all of this?
I think so. That's the intentionality of thinking about how are you going to not do that. I teach students, even the healthcare students over in Building 14 where we're housed. We're housed in the $31 million health sciences complex. I teach them it's not a light switch that you can turn on and off, like your caring and your compassion and all of that. But we get fatigued when we're constantly on and taking on people's trauma. So I encourage people, don't do that. Don't take it on. It's not yours to carry. Okay. You're creating space so that person can do their work, but we don't have to carry that. We will walk alongside someone, as they do that. But I think it would be easy to lose yourself. So I teach them not a light switch, but a dial. So dial up your caring, dial it back down. When you go home, you've got to focus on maybe family and or pets or plants or whatever you got going on at your house. You got to save some capacity for yourself and for them as well. So it's really an art and a science figuring out what does that look like. The other thing is I think it's a good place to hide because we can play the role of an expert or I personally believe that clients are the expert on their life. I'm not the expert. I just hopefully ask powerful questions and do reflections and help them to determine their values and what's important to them. Mm-hmm. But I think that we could easily think that we're the expert and get lost in that, or we could easily hide and not do our own work or focus on helping everybody else and forget about ourselves. Yeah. But it's kind of like, that cliche about being on the airplane and putting the mask on first, but it's really true in our field too. If we can do that and take care of ourselves and keep our capacity open, then we'll be better helpers and we'll be able to have the capacity to help other people. Yeah. So I think that it's a cautionary tale. Let's be sure we don't lose ourselves. And we are constantly talking about that in our classrooms about how do you keep your capacity? How do you take care of yourself? It's not, like I said, it's not a manicure. It's way deeper than that. It's way more radical than that. For sure. And what does that look like? And if we can be role models of that, we can help clients figure out how to do that for themselves.
That's true, because they look up to y'all. So, and I feel like balance in a field like this is so important. You have to have balance, because if you don't, then that's how things can get mixed up, and you don't want that because you do have a job to do at the end of the day, and you're supposed to be on top of that. So self-care, making sure you're good, is a very important thing. So for our next and basically final topic here, we already understand what your motivations were. You said that you felt as though this was a calling for you and you wanted to help people. So I wanted to know, what was the reason you stuck with it for so long? Because those inspirations and feelings can always be there in the beginning, but you've put 10, 20, 30 years into this. So what's made you stick with it?
So to be honest, people in my field, we could be in it for 30 years, and some weeks we're like, what are we doing? What have we done? Am I even helping anyone? How is this happening? What did I do? But then invariably, one of two things happens. Either I find a letter or I seek it out and I look at a card or something somebody sent me, and I have a little file folder of that when I need it, and it's inspiration to remember why I do this. Or I hear from someone when I'm feeling like that or believing that. I'll hear back from someone and they'll say what a difference I made for them, whether it's a student or a client. And then that's what keeps us going, because we know that we are adding value. Some weeks it doesn't feel like it. Some minutes it doesn't feel like it. Some days the world can be heavy. Yeah. But I purposefully have, like a box of those things that I can really cling to when those times come and when those doubts come. And it's funny because I just talked to someone who's in the collaborative with me where my private practice, and she's been doing this about as long as I have. And she said, isn't it funny that we still have those moments and those days? So to keep going, we have to remind ourselves why we got into this and remember that we are making a difference, even though some days it doesn't seem like it. Mm-hmm. And really, that's why having those colleagues, to work through that moment is important as well, to consult and to lift each other up. So, but it's just unbelievable when I have those moments. There's somebody coming to remind me why I do what I do. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, if I can't do it for myself, the universe is going to provide it. So, and I've talked to many, many colleagues about that, and we say the same things. So it's just not giving up, believing in what you're doing, persevering, just like we're asking our clients to do again. Yeah. If we can role model that and not give up, then we can help other people do that.
Nice. So it basically just gets to a point where you just have to practice what you preach to them, it sounds like. Yes. Which makes sense, because just talking to you, that can get heavy for sure. That's a lot going on. Yeah. So, do you ever get a break? Do you ever get a break during all of this? Or are you always thinking about it, or are you able to kind of disconnect for a period of time? What would you say?
I have a favorite colleague, and he has been a really good role model of how to disconnect and leave things behind. And even as you leave your office or drive away from the building, what kind of rituals can you put into place to leave it behind? And again, that dial. And I used to talk about turn it off, the light switch on and off. I don't think that's it anymore. I think it's really the dial of, I'm going to turn down work and I'm going to turn up, whatever that looks like, family or working out or whatever it is that I need to do. I think that, again, that intentionality of thinking of how am I going to continue to be effective. But I sat in my car crying after a long day and some sessions that were heartbreaking? Absolutely. But I've found ways and rituals to contain that, leave that at work so that I can, be effective in other realms of my life. And I do think, like you said, it's balance. I also think it's flow, like flowing with the day and flowing with things and not letting things flow through instead of like holding on to them or taking on things that we're not meant to carry. Mm-hmm. Really understanding the difference of what does that look like. We can help people learn to carry their own, but we don't have to carry that. And, that's an ethical thing too, of like what's ours and what's theirs and keeping separate boundaries and that kind of thing. Again, art and a science, you got to learn how to do that. You got to tell on yourself. You got to ask for help. You got to ask for support. Mm-hmm. And those who have done the field longer can help you with that because they've been doing it. So I never want to discourage people from this because, again, it's the most rewarding thing I can imagine doing. It's just we have to be very honest with each other and prepare people for what they're about to experience. And that way they can keep that longevity and keep that going for 30, 40, 50 years.
That's true. It always starts in the beginning. And I think that's why we wanted you here today, so that you could tell us that raw reality. Because you can get the sugar-coated version. The books can tell you one thing, but you're not going to get that real feel except from an actual person who's been through it and goes through it. And it's important for beginners to understand what they're getting into, because that's how you get messed up in the end, because you didn't know what you were starting. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people in college, and they're young, trying to figure out what they want to do in life. And let's say that they don't necessarily have that calling, but they still feel inspired to go and try some social work, it's definitely good to know what you're getting into, because it could always be more than what you originally expected. But that also makes people feel better when they do get into it. At least they know what's going to be lying in front of them so that they can handle things accordingly. Like for me, if I know what I'm about to go into, I can develop a plan, kind of stick to that plan, tweak it the way I need to so I can maneuver my way through and get through it. Um, so, yeah, that's very, very important. I think your perspective is so unique because you've experienced so many different things in social work. You've broken it up into different spots, different people, and all of that. So it's a very useful thing, especially for students, people who are already in the field. Like you said, it probably takes years to be able to figure out how you personally will deal with those adversities that come up. You've had so many years into it. I don't know if you're still doing a lot of the same things you were doing in the beginning, or if you've developed some new things. Like you said, with the switch and now the dial, like things change over time, and that's just through your experience that you've developed. So instilling that in the beginner's mind, people who are just getting started, something good to think about. And so they can start to kind of tailor their emotions and how they feel and develop their own little plan to deal with those things. Because there's a lot to deal with. Yeah. Based off of what you told me, that's a lot. So it sounds like you've got the golden ticket, though, when it comes to dealing with everything and strategies and whatnot to put up with all the different work. Um, so at the end, as we close here, you've given a lot of advice already, but is there any other thing in general, not even in the behavioral health field, that you would like to tell people or students who are listening that could kind of help them better their lives? Is there any information or advice you'd like to give?
I mean, the thing that comes to my mind is, again, that thing that I tell people when they're like, I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that. And I'm like, if you have a dream, if a dream has been put into you, then you have what it takes to reach that. I was never, the dream was never put into me to be like a WNBA basketball player. Yeah. I'm not going to be that. But the dream was put into me to be a helper. Mm-hmm. And come to find out, even though I didn't know it and I didn't believe it, I had everything I needed to get there. And so there's people along the way who will champion you, I can think back of mentors and people, they believed in me before I believed in myself. Right. So if we're struggling to believe in ourselves, let's find the people out there that believe in us, because they will drag us to the finish line. They'll take us on their backs. Let's help each other do that. And if it's in you to do something, even if it's not this field, any field, believe in your dreams and set yourself up and believe that the people and the resources and the things that you need, just keep your eye on the prize. I've told my students, like, put your graduation date, put in your workspace, put some kind of thing that you can, it's a vision of what you want, a picture, whatever, and look at it every day, all day, and just keep your focus and keep your eye on the prize, and you can get there. When you least expect it, when you think all is lost, people and things and resources will show up if you just keep believing. Yes. So I think that we have dreams in us, and sometimes we let life, and we let ourselves, or we believe something somebody said one time, and we forget that we have the capability to do what's put in our heart to do. So if we have a calling, then let's line things up so that we can reach that.
Yes, I love that. I hope that everybody understood and retains that message. So, Gwen, you've been so helpful today with a lot of the information you've given. I have a way better and clearer understanding of the field now and what it could really be like out there. But for anybody who wanted to learn more, who didn't get enough from this session today, how would anyone go about getting in touch with you or your organization?
Basically, we're at Sinclair. I can be reached. My email is gwendolyn.helton@sinclair.edu. They can call the department 937-512-2756 and get a hold of us. There's 4 full-time faculty. We are willing to answer questions, but I have a lot of calls from people who want more information about the field. And like I said, my promise to people is I will talk to you about the field and help you find where you belong, even if it's not with us.
That's wonderful.
It's really important to figure out where you belong and again, answer that calling. So Even calling the general number at Sinclair, you could probably, they can find me. So, but our department name is Mental Health and Addiction Services, so you can Google that as well, and all our contact information is in there.
Perfect. Okay, nice. Well, I wanted to say thank you, first of all, Gwen, for joining us and coming on here and educating everybody on what it can really be like out there in the field and what it takes to get there. And I wanted to thank everybody else for watching and tuning in today and listening to what Gwen had to offer. I know that everyone can take away at least something from this podcast today. You've shared so much information with us. And we already know that you're going to continue to go on and do wonderful things and inspire even more people. And if there's anybody watching who eventually runs into this woman at some point after they've done their journey, please tell her so that she knows that she has made an impact even here on this lovely podcast today. But if anyone wants to know any more information about behavioral health and ways to get involved, please go and check out our website over at behavioralhealthcareer.com. We have a lot of other things on there, helpful information, and we also have the previous podcasts as well if you are listening somewhere other than YouTube. So you can go in there, and we have everything organized and ready to go for you. But for today, that brings us to the end of the podcast. Thank you again so much, Gwen. You have helped and even inspired me a lot more to kind of put my foot down and really try to go forward into that social work field, because at first I was a little bit nervous because I didn't really know everything that it entailed, but you've given me such a better idea. Now I know. So, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time on the Social Work Speaks podcast.